over half of employees leave because of bad bosses. I've had bad bosses as well. And I recognize, because I had really good ones and I had not so good ones, I absolutely know the difference, and I absolutely understand the impact and the influence a good manager can have. First question that everyone should ask themselves anytime they're in a conversation with anyone: what do I want the outcome of this conversation to be?
Do you see any patterns that is shifting from, let's say, 10 years ago till now, that we are talking about all the macroeconomics and everything that is happening around us, including AI, that maybe leaders have certain, challenges top of mind to fix today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Jenny, how are you doing today?
Hello, Michael. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Jenny, before we kickstart this session, I'm super excited because you've been there, you've done that, you've been a leader for the longest time, and I'm really curious to learn about your current practice. But first, I want to hear about your journey. So take us to the very first days that you started your professional journey, and tell us what you're doing now.
Wow, it's been a journey. I've been in the game now about 30 years, but someone told me that I should say 3 decades, that it sounds better to say 3 decades. So I have been in a component of sales for 3 decades now. So I started my career actually in live entertainment ticketing. So I worked for venues, promoters. I worked for Ticketmaster for 10 and a half years. And actually, my background educationally is in marketing. I thought I was going to go work for an ad agency, but I was fortunate enough to have an internship that opened the doors for me to get into sales. And it was in the theater industry, which also was very interesting and changed the entire trajectory of what I thought I wanted to do. And so live entertainment ticketing, Ticketmaster 10 and a half years. Then that led me to what I call my chapter 2, which was tech. That opened the door to the tech industry. And I worked for a small startup company for a couple years. And then I went to Groupon, which was a huge, huge part of another 11 years. Who thought that I would have 2 companies under my belt over 10 years? In today's world, that's just not feasible, right? It's just not possible. So I was very fortunate. Groupon was an amazing journey. That's really where I got my feet wet with sales leadership. Ticketmaster was leadership marketing, sales marketing kind of combination. But as soon as I got to Groupon, it was straight up leadership and sales. So I was responsible for the sales business unit, inside, outside sales. I did new business. I did retention business, account management, customer success. As you can imagine, in 11 years, lots of changes. It was an amazing journey, but that's where I realized my purpose. And my purpose was developing managers, developing leaders. I really, really enjoyed that component, even though I was responsible for the, revenue of my business unit, which comes hand in hand with sales. The component that I loved the most was developing leaders. So that takes me to the chapter that I'm in right now, which is I started my own business 2.5 years ago. And I focus on leadership development for mid-level management. So for managers, directors, VPs, senior VPs. And my client base is the tech companies, the SaaS companies. My network has built my business. So that's where I am today.
This is amazing. You know what I noticed? You keep saying chapter. That's what I love, from the get-go, because this is the next chapter. That was the chapter. And I'm sure each chapter, you not only learn a lot, you had a reason to stay around. And sales is difficult, and we all know it. And you started as a marketer, but you got into sales, and you said, I was fortunate enough to get introduced to the world of sales. So I want to understand, what happened? What prompted you to actually, enjoy this process and stay for so long?
I have to say, what opened the door to sales for me were two mentors who were my bosses. Um, a woman by the name of Gemma Mulvihill, who hired me as an intern. She opened the door for me into the sales world, into the group sales world for theater. And I absolutely loved it. I didn't know that that was something that I could do. And then, so that was definitely transformative for me and a crossroads, my first crossroad, if you will. And my second one was another boss of mine, Michael Walthius. I have to give out shout outs because they fundamentally both changed the course of my career. And again, I was in marketing at Ticketmaster, and he kind of pulled me into the sales world, and he felt that, you know, he was unlocking potential in me from a sales perspective. And he really opened the doors. Without those two journeys, if you will, and experiences in my career, I would not have been able to take on the responsibility and the role at Groupon, which really set me up to take on this chapter and this role in my career. So they're all stepping stones, right? And I was fortunate enough, people always ask me, they're like, what was your playbook? You know, everybody wants a playbook, right? Everybody wants a playbook. What's your playbook? And I got to tell you, like, I was very fortunate to take advantage of opportunities that were presented to me. I was very fortunate to be surrounded by amazing mentors who took a risk on me. And then that just opened the door for me to really get into areas of my career that I never thought were possible. If you would have asked me 3 years ago, you know, that I would be a solo entrepreneur today with my own business and a thriving business, you know, 2.5 years in, I would have thought you were crazy. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? Like, that's not what I do. But look, this is where I'm at. So you have to take those risks. You have to be open to failure, right? Because with risk comes potential failure and potential success, right? But no one walks into something thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be so successful. They walk in thinking, I cannot fail, right? I cannot fail. So it was a mindset shift without a doubt. But I've been, again, very fortunate to be blessed with amazing mentors and listening to the inner voice say, take the risk, take the risk.
Mhm.
What's the worst thing that can happen, right? Fail forward. So
Absolutely, I
that
love it.
is what got me here.
Look, we need to talk about taking risk because you're a founder. I'm a founder. I'm super curious about what you're doing today. But I want to go back to what you said about having great mentors. And you said I was fortunate, and you repeated a few times because we sometimes hear that because of bad managers, people completely shift their mindset and career, and they say, "Look, I hate sales. This is the worst career in the world." But someone like you, because good people actually pick you up and gave you the opportunity to learn about your strength. I would say maybe that actually helped you build this leadership in you. But I want to understand when the opportunity came to you. Of course, you took the risk. You're a founder. You most probably had this, power in you to take the opportunity. But you have to be ready. You have to have at least a mindset ready to jump right in and say, you know what, I'm going to take it and see what happens. Or maybe you don't. I don't know. I want to hear what happened, with you, that you made that decision to jump right in and take the opportunity and roll with it.
You know, when I reflect, right, when I reflect back on how was I built, right? Because when you think back, you're like, okay, all of the experiences, all of the knowledge, right? It takes you to the next level. And before I decided to take on this solo entrepreneur founder type of approach into my career now, at this stage of the game especially, I thought, how did I get here? What was the driving factor? And like you said, you start to realize the foundation came before the internship, before college, before everything. When I started to reflect on how I was built, it it went directly to my parents. So
Mm.
I am a child of immigrant parents, right? They migrated here from Greece. So I'm first generation American, and my parents owned a restaurant. They were entrepreneurs. And They had a restaurant, a small diner in our neighborhood. They owned it for 20 years. They ran it. It was just the two of them. And when I think back at what impacted and influenced me in my life and in my career, the foundation were my parents, right? And
I,
and having them, witnessing their entrepreneurship, witnessing them building a brand, witnessing them creating a service that brought, right, the audience into the diner and then retained them, right? Brand, service, retention, all the things, right? As a sales leader, I learned, I teach, I coach. Yet the biggest lessons I learned was from my parents, right? Because they were the ones doing it very early on in my life, and I didn't realize the impact that had on me. So I would say that is probably the most fundamental part of my foundation, and it just took a while to get me to the realization that I was ready to jump into that pool of solo entrepreneurship. So yeah, but I would say that was the foundation for me, the anchor.
this is super fascinating. I should say that because sometimes, to your point, we don't even know what we have back in our head. We're just watching our parents, just the surrounding, like things that we observe as as children, and that kind of like build our personality and um, our being. And then at some point in our life, like it just sounds right. I think I have it in me. I have to do it. And I love your story. Look, let me ask you a question about your leadership journey. So first, you started as an intern, and you got into, being a frontliner, I assume. How did you make this a decision to do the transition to leadership? Because many people, stay in sales, like myself. I've been a frontliner. I like to serve clients. I enjoy these meetings and making money. But some people like yourself, switch to leadership for different reasons. What were your reasons to make this shift?
Yeah. Listen, I loved being an individual contributor, right? To your point, I loved being in the front lines. I loved working with clients and customers, the income, clearly, right? I absolutely loved being on the front line as an individual contributor. However, when the opportunity presented itself for me to take on one employee, two employees, become a manager. Then I became a regional director. And, over the course of time, started to develop my management skill set. I really loved that. I absolutely loved my ability to impact someone else's career. I loved it. I loved being able to develop people. You said something earlier about people leave, right? We know when people leave, they don't leave the company, they leave their bosses, right? Because they're not good bosses. We know that's a very high statistic. Over half of employees leave because of bad bosses. I've had bad bosses as well. And I recognize, because I had really good ones who I call mentors, and I had not so good ones, right? For a variety of reasons throughout my career. I absolutely know the difference, and I absolutely understand the impact and the influence a good manager can have. Because if you can positively impact someone's career development, career progression, then they are going to move that forward, right? They're going to pass that on, and they're going to be good managers, right? And then we have an environment, a landscape, a culture of better managers than, bad ones. So the that inspired me, that motivated me to be able to have that level of influence and impact on employees. And so unlocking potential in people, it's part of my DNA. I just that is what motivates me. That's what inspires me. And when you think of, especially in sales, right? We're driven by revenue. We're driven by KPIs and sales goals. I always made sure, in conjunction of chasing the number and delivering for the company and the growth of the organization, that I would set aside personal KPIs, right? What was my personal and direct impact on people that worked for me, that worked with me, whether they were in my business unit, individual contributors or managers or leaders or colleagues or even clients. That was a very important component for my personal satisfaction and growth. And so that was just something that I realized I loved and that it inspired me and that I was really good at it. So I leaned into my strengths because, we live in a world, I built a business on it, about development. Like, okay, what are your areas of growth? What skills do we need to develop? More than ever, we have our fingertips on resources across the board, right? More knowledge, more insights, more accessibility to every training material known to man, right? But I think what's important equally is not only focusing on the areas of growth, but what are your strengths? What's the one, two, three things at most that distinguishes you from others, right? And are you leaning into that? And are you focusing in on that as much as you are on the development side of things, right? And so for me, I learned that early on, that I had a distinguishing skill that I could really impact and influence people. So I leaned into that for something good.
I love it. And it feels good. And even when you talk about it, I can see the energy. It's just like, I've done it because it felt good. It felt right, helping people and seeing them grow. And you build a business around it, which is amazing because this is something that is so close to you that you felt it, as you said. Like, I've been around, I've seen good and bad, leadership, and I deal with them. And then I build leaders. So I assume every day you see good and I wouldn't call them bad leaders, but people who actually need more handholding and help to really find their strength. So I wanted to learn about your approach. So just imagine when you start working with a company, where do you even start? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, I start with discovery, right? You apply all of the same sales process that you learn and that you
Yep.
teach as a sales leader. You approach it and you leverage that framework in all aspects of your life, truly, right?
Mhm.
It's first and foremost, it's establishing the connection and identifying, where are the gaps, right? Asking questions, where are their pain points? What are they trying to accomplish? Every company is a little different. So really understanding where is that gap and how can I, through my programs, help support that gap as it relates in the wheelhouse of leadership development, right? So I'm very focused in that particular area. So it really starts with a discovery conversation and really understanding, where are the gaps and what can my programs do to make an immediate impact on those individuals, right? It's not about because development is an ongoing effort, right? It's not a check the box. I'm now done.
So
I took a course or I took a class. Uh, it is an ongoing effort. So what I try to do is provide a framework, provide methodology, provide key takeaways, a mindset shift, bringing that level of awareness and actionable tools that can be used to make an immediate impact after every conversation, after every program. There's an expectation that I put on my clients to, you know, incorporate their learnings and making an immediate impact. It's about incremental growth, right? I'm not someone who believes in perfection, and I don't believe in mastering anything. I just don't.
absolutely.
I believe in incremental improvement. I think perfection is a really nice adjective, and it's something that everybody can strive towards, right? Mastering is a great marketing word, right? We like to use that as a nice little marketing word. But for me, the result is what's key. And the result should always be you're striving for incremental growth. If you are better than you were yesterday, if you were better than you were a year ago, 5 years ago, then you're winning, right? You're making movements forward, you're striving. So that for me is kind of my philosophy behind my leadership advisory slash coaching, if you will.
Absolutely with you. And I love the fact that you mentioned it's a journey. It's not a one-off thing. Okay, Michael got coached. Now he's great and go and perform. He's not a robot. He needs constant development because market is changing. I'm really curious to actually hear about your discovery. It sounds like you're really focusing on, having these discovery discussions with your clients, and each client, to your point, is different. People have different use cases, different challenges. But do you see any patterns that is shifting from, let's say, 10 years ago up till now, that we are talking about all the macroeconomics and everything that is happening around us, including AI, that maybe leaders have certain, challenges top of mind to fix today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one challenge today that I didn't have, as I was growing into my career is time. There's just not the expectation of what needs to get done yesterday is at an all-time high, right? There's not a lot of time for trial and error. There's not a lot of time for growth and development, right? It's you got to do it now and you got to do it fast. It needs to be done yesterday, right? Shareholders want to see growth. Board members want to see growth. Companies, want to go public, right? So there is an urgency to the landscape of today's companies that was not as urgent, right? All of those same things mattered, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? They mattered, right? Companies wanted growth, all of the same things, but you had more time to do it. Today, there's not as much time. I think companies also, over the last decade or so, right, have been going through various downsizing, right? Different companies, they downsize, they grow, they downsize, they grow. The tech explosion, right? So much of our technology, AI, as you've mentioned, right? It has, and our ability for us to, we're on 24/7. We could sit here and say, absolutely, we have boundaries, right? We need to balance our professional life, our personal life. Absolutely. But now that's an effort. Now that's an intention. Where before it was just part of life, right? You worked and then you went home, right? Now you go home and you have your iPhone, you have your email, you have social media, right? The accessibility and the expectation of your availability is at an all-time high. And that's how we operate today. Now, one can say, well, that has led us to the growth and the success, right, that we have today that we didn't have as quickly. Absolutely, right? But with that also comes, the burnout. With that comes, the mental health, right? So there's pros and cons to everything, but I would say those are the distinct differences that we today and I today I'm very mindful of as I coach and as I provide tools for people to be able to manage today's landscape and expectations.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only, revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. And that's absolutely true. Again, we're a remote first company. Everybody's remote. We're traveling around the world. But to your point, we are engaged with our devices 24/7. I wake up, I answer my emails and run, 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 run. And again, that has some serious ripple effects. burnouts, again, not being super engaged with our surroundings and just get the job done and just go, go, go. But to your point, again, the positive side is you get the job done. So I wanted to hear from manager side of things. So when you actually go and talk to these middle level managers or leaders, what are some of the challenges that you hear from them, from their perspective today?
Yeah. They are wearing many hats, right? So with the downsizing has come an increased amount of responsibility and expectations within roles. And so carving out time to develop their people and be able to hit their sales goals and be able to be present in all the different meetings that they're expected to be in. Again, it goes down to time. Finding that time is a challenge. So I would say time management and organizational structure are two very important components to helping today's manager be successful, right? There needs to be a very, very intentional approach towards their time management. There has to be a very strategic approach to dividing and conquering responsibilities, meaning, you're being very clear with what is the prioritization matrix, if you will, right? What is important for you to get done and what is important, but someone else on your team can get it done, right? So that intentional strategic approach of dividing and conquering. With doing that, it also opens the door to unlocking potential for others, right? And you're giving people an opportunity for growth and development as well. But you have to be very intentional and very strategic about that to ensure that it all gets done in a timely manner. So I definitely think those two are really key components to the success of today's manager is time management and organizational structure.
Would it be possible to hear a real life example? We don't need to share the company name. The company that you actually ran this exercise internally for them. And maybe we don't want to call it playbook. You mentioned everybody wants the playbook, but a framework that someone who's actually listening to this can, share this recording with their managers. Say, hey guys, start this tomorrow. Start practicing it.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I do, as I said, it's a conversation, right? Once I understand where the gaps are and what the stakeholder is looking to accomplish, and let's say we agree, I make my presentation, they're aligned with the programs of what my programs can influence and impact for them. Then once I start working with their employees, right, the stakeholders' employees, so the managers, the directors, the VPs of that organization, first I do is a discovery with them, right? What are their, and it's through a survey, right? So questionnaire, if you will. What are their strengths? What are their challenges? What are they looking to get? What's the result that they're looking for, at the end of our sessions together? And what that does is it really gives me some insight on the agenda, if you will, of what we're going to be focusing in on. And that's as it relates to my individualized leadership coaching program. Once we have conversations and we start to, work together, now we're getting to know each other, right? But I would say the biggest takeaway from my one-on-one sessions is at the end of every session, I ask the question, what were your key takeaways? I make sure that we have alignment, that they have some learning that they can then apply to their workflow. What resonated based on the different themes and conversations and or issues that we were tackling within our discussion? Can they lean into and apply into their workflow? And so during every session that we have, it starts with, okay, was there a scenario where you applied your learnings? At the end of every session, what were your key takeaways? Having that alignment and accountability is what allows for my program to be successful because, again, it's about incremental improvement. It makes an immediate impact.
I love it. Like, I think the secret sauce, if we can call it that, is that you run this one-on-one discovery session and each level. So let's just talk to VP of Sales, CRO, understand like what's going on in their perspective, aligning it to the board and what they're trying to achieve. And then you go on one-on-one sessions and you hold them accountable. This is really good because this is like a manager rep one-on-one pretty much. Like, what did you learn from this call? What can what could you improve? So what do you want to do next week? Like if even one skill set you want to improve. So that pretty much I think is the approach that teaches the leaders while doing it. So maybe they can bring this to their own reps and environment. So speaking of that, one of the biggest challenges I notice right now working with some of my clients when they talk about their frontline leaders is the fact that they're stressed. They wear many hats, as you said, and they're responsible for revenue. At the same time, they have to run their one-on-one sessions. So most of these one-on-one sessions turn to deal review. Let's just have a conversation around your deals and numbers. How could we coach our coaches basically not to do that? Just focus on the person in front of them. Is there any framework that you could share?
Yeah, listen, at the first question that everyone should ask themselves anytime they're in a conversation with anyone, right? Whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a team meeting, uh, with employees, with colleagues, with customers, right? What do I want the outcome of this conversation to be, right? What's the outcome? And then once you've established what you want the outcome to be, you work backwards and you start to put together a process, an approach that's going to deliver that outcome. I think what happens is because of our urgency and our jumping from meetings to meetings to meetings, no one's carving out time to pause and think about what do I want out of this conversation, right? And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, 5 minutes. Just get your mindset ready for this conversation. And if you take the time to ask that question, prepare yourself for every conversation, the outcome will be better. I think where we tend to get lost in conversations is when we don't have a clear idea of what we want the outcome of the conversation to be, right? We don't know the intention of the meeting. We just jump into our next meeting, right? So I think if people, especially in this virtual world, right, we go from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, or Google Meets. We're just going from one video conferencing call to another. So I think it's really, again, holding our own selves accountable to being present in the conversation that we're in and making sure that we know what do I want the outcome to be? Because if you know what you want the outcome to be, then you're going to navigate that conversation effectively, right? You're going to use the right word choices. You're going to use the right approach to deliver on that outcome. So that would be the biggest tip that I would give companies and anyone listening to today's call. If you just make that minor adjustment in your workflow, it'll have an amazing impact.
I really love this because while you were saying this, I was just reviewing my previous calls today. I was like, being intentional. And you're absolutely right because we are fast. We want to get things done. We hear some feedback from clients. And I have a call maybe with my internal team right after. Can I just take a step back instead of dumping all the feedback right away? Because I have this tendency, I want to get the job done. Take a step back and think through why even you booked this meeting in the first place. The agenda was about something that people are prepared, themselves for it. And by shifting that agenda, you're running the culture. So they know you as a leader, you just react to things rather than really sticking to what you promised. We want to discuss about something, people prepared themselves. And I think to your point, it's very simple, but it's really powerful if we know exactly what we want to achieve for each conversation, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a one-on-one session. So I'll take that into account and back in my head. Next time I want to jump right in and just start talking.
Shoot me a note. Let me know how it goes.
Absolutely. Hold me accountable. No, this is great. Jenny, I wanted to ask a question about people who might be a little bit resistant to our change. And, many people sometimes, create this identity around being exceptional at leadership. And to me, leadership is something that you you learn. Yes, maybe you have the desire internally, but it's a skill set. You have to really practice and learn. And sometimes we think we are there, we arrived. Can you give me some example of people who actually think they arrived, but they really need a shift, or maybe a better word could be unlearn some of these learnings to start being a better leader?
Yeah, survey their employees. That's because a leader should be impactful. A leader should be influential, right? So I would look and survey the team members that report into them. I would survey the colleagues that work with them. If they're not being influential and impactful, then they're not a leader, right? They could be a manager, which again, there's that whole debate of manager versus leader. Is it the same? Is it different? It absolutely is different. There's a big distinction between being a leader and being a manager. Now, a leader can be a leader and a manager, but straight up manager is just a manager, right? Manager is tactical, and it should be, right? But if you want to be a leader, considered a leader, you want to define yourself as a leader, you have to be impactful and you have to be influential, right? You have to impact people, you have to influence decisions for the greater good, right? And look at it from the lens of not just an individual contributor or just your team, but the entire organization or the entire business unit or your entire well-being of the team, right? So I think, you need both. And there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with just wanting to be a manager, right? I want to be a solid manager. That's not a problem, right? But if you are a manager who wants to be a leader and be considered a leader, then you have to level up, right? And you have to go from being tactical, right? The day to day troubleshooting, uh, fire drilling, taking the meetings, being somewhat sometimes individual contributor as well. Like, you can hit numbers and still not be a leader, right? So a leader, you really have to look at the people that surround you. And what are they saying about you? Are you impacting them? Are you influencing them? Are you, whether it's them personally or the organization as a whole, are you leveling up? Do you have presence? Do you have integrity? Do you stand for something? Are you leaning into your strengths? Right? Is there trust? Is there trust? Are you developing people? That to me is what defines a leader, right? And regardless of what industry you're in. So I think that is a really important distinguishing factor, if you will. And, based on my experience, I've been exposed to both. I've been exposed to people who are saying, you know what, leadership is a little too much for me. I'm good right here. Nothing wrong with that, right? But if you want to be a leader and be considered as one, you have to put the work in to be able to also deliver on those type of results.
Look, this is how I see it, and I might be off base, and I have someone super, passionate and experienced about the topic, so I want you to correct me. Based on my experience, we need leaders as managers to be able to build a thriving company with a good culture. Because to your point, tactical managers are great. They help with the numbers. They bring ideas how to tactically, move the needle. But when it comes to people development, when it comes to growing as a company altogether, internal promotions, really navigating some of the challenges each individual is dealing with, if the leadership skill is not there, we see a lot of talent churn. My point of view is, if we are building sustainable companies that have happy people that are growing not only through numbers, but individually as human beings and building skill sets for life outside of even work, we need leaders. But I want to hear your perspective on it. Can we just run companies with tactical managers, or maybe just that don't even worry about leadership?
No, I don't think first of all, I don't think companies can grow if they haven't invested in leaders, right? There needs to be leaders within the organization, and there needs to be tactical managers, right? Like I said, there could be an individual who wears both those hats, and there could be individuals who absolutely have different hats, right? One is
Mhm.
tactical management, one's leader. But a company, in order for them to grow and sustain that growth, needs to have both. You also can't have an organization just leaders, right? Because that's also a challenge, right? You need to have both within the organization. And the companies that I have seen be successful with that philosophy or framework are the companies who are growing, right? They're the companies that you are constantly seeing as ranked as the top companies to work for, right? They're focusing on the right things. But it's an investment, right? You have to invest in it. You either invest in it internally by hiring the right people and providing that development growth opportunity for them, or bringing other types of support from the outside in, right? I mean, there is an audience and there's a leadership development program or person or entity for everybody, right? It's just finding the right match for the organization. But it is critical to the development. You cannot expect people to deliver at the level that you want them to establish and achieve sustainable growth without investing in them, right? A basketball team, the NBA, doesn't achieve the championship just by being average and not investing in the right talent when it comes to scouting, and bringing the right players based on what are the skills that you need, right? Do you need a 3-point shooter? Do you need somebody who is a defender? Like, what do you need to make that team a success? The other thing that I find companies do, you'll see a CEO. Here's an interesting point. Start paying attention to your clients a little bit. If you see a CEO who's surrounded by an executive leadership team that is a carbon copy of that CEO, I would be questioning the success of that organization. I'd be curious, are they successful? Because if the CEO is only surrounding themselves, male, female, whatever, right, with one point of view, it will be very difficult for them to sustain the growth that they're hoping for. Now, if you find a CEO who surrounds themselves, right, with different points of view, different perspectives, right, different individuals, different experiences, now their chances are much higher of success, right? Because you need, again, I don't believe in mastering anything, right? I know what I'm really good at. I also know what I'm not really good at. So I'm going to hire the people around me who are really good at the things that I'm not really good at, to ensure that the deliverables are there. They don't always have to be deliverables that I achieve, as long as the people that I'm responsible for deliver those, right? So that to me is a company that really, really understands the importance of growth, development, perspective, sustainable growth. I've seen it, right? So I think, look at your companies that you work with through that lens, and ask yourself, how successful are they based on the profile of their group?
This is such a unique and interesting perspective. And I think what you're saying is very, very important because it shows more than just being aware or having the skill set to pick the right people. It comes with a humility, comes with understanding that maybe I'm good at something and I'm not good at something else. And other people can help me, can help the entire company, because it's about the company. It's not about me as an individual. So we all can grow by having people with different background and perspectives. I love this. It's a very interesting example. All right. So I think we are about time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I have last question. So Jenny, look, um, everybody's talking about AI. I know I brought it up during the conversation, and one of
Yep.
the other, again, challenges I'm seeing working with our own clients is that many leaders are scared of being replaced. I know we talk about like AI, don't replace you. I mean, there are a lot of different opinions on LinkedIn and everywhere about this. But is it something that you're hearing first and foremost when you're working with your clients? And how do we navigate this? How do we help our leaders taking advantage of this new wave as a positive rather than something that sabotages, their ability to do their work better?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm a huge proponent of AI. As a solo entrepreneur, AI, ChatGPT, shout out to ChatGPT. It is my collaborator. It is my partner in crime. It is my CMO. It is my CEO. I mean, I kid you not, a co CEO. I love it. It allows me to get things done in a much more timely and efficient way. And if we circle back to what I mentioned about time being the biggest challenge for
Mm-hmm.
us, right? AI delivers that solution, right? If done correctly. My biggest concern for the generation that's coming out of college today, right, is that they are leveraging AI as their brain versus a partner and a collaborator, right? And the problem with that is it is important for our generation, right? That's entering the workforce today to build the brain muscle that it takes to do the job. We can't just deliver, outcomes that AI has created. You cannot let AI be your brain. You need to embrace AI as your collaborator so that you continue to build that brain muscle. So I think that to me is in my opinion, strictly based on my opinion, a really effective way to leverage AI as a success tool. I think for those who are afraid, look, every era, every generation, right? There is technology that is created for the betterment of the world. So, with every generation comes new technology where everyone is fearful that it is now going to replace their jobs. And guess what? It is going to replace some jobs. Let us not kid ourselves. It absolutely will, absolutely replace some jobs, right? But it's also going to open up a whole other world of opportunity for people as well. And so this generation is no different than the generations before us, right? I mean, Google, I mean, think of everything, technology as a whole, right? For me, Google was like everything. So, and the generations, ahead of us are going to also come up. This just happens to be our generation's time, right? The generation of today coming up with AI, which again, embrace technology, embrace the learnings, embrace how you could leverage it. And it's okay not to be comfortable. No one should be comfortable. Everybody should be challenged, right? Because that's how we grow. If we become complacent, no one grows, right? So AI has entered the world and has made everyone uncomfortable. And that's a good thing for everyone to be a little uncomfortable, but embrace it. Find ways to leverage it and use it to the best of your ability. Saving time, getting more creative, but always make sure you carve out time to build your own brain power. Don't let it be a crutch. And if you come from that perspective, you will continue to find success.
All right. I love it. Thank you very much, Jenny. I learned a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Before we wrap it up, if someone wants to reach out, Jenny, can they? How?
Yes, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Jenny at advanceforwardconsulting.com is my email address. I also have a website, advanceforwardconsulting.com. So I look forward. Let me know you heard the podcast, and I'd love to talk to anyone that I can help support their organization with leadership development. And Michael, thank you so much for inviting me onto this podcast
My pleasure.
and for the wonderful conversation today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, guys. Until next time. Bye.
Take care.